I was just looking through some photos that I took probably about 10 years ago. I think it was around 2020, no, yeah, 2014, I think it was. 2014, 2013, something like that. I was about 3 or 4 years into my beekeeping at that time, and I was keeping some bees at a friend's house in Logie Bay, or a property they have in Logie Bay. And you can see I got hive back there, one here, one there, one there, and then two more off on the side in the woods. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then we had a really rainy winter, and you can see things started getting a little swampy. And look, it just turned into a big swamp all around my my little bee yard. And check this out. Well, if I didn't have the bees set up with a nice, well, off the ground, they would have just gotten soaked, and it would have gotten pretty messy. Here you can see some bees. They actually came out and just drowned, and so yeah, it turned into a swamp, and it wasn't specifically too good. So it's no wonder that my bees got like totally soaked. This is some dry sugar that is now soaking wet over some newspaper that is also soaking wet. I think that was put in there probably a week earlier, something like that. And at the time, it wasn't just the swamp. This one wasn't actually in the swamp. It was away from the swamp, and it still got soaking wet. And it was because in Newfoundland we have this thing called 90-degree rain, and we had a huge, massive, crazy rainstorm, and somehow all that water got into the hive. I won't get into it, but anyway, it made a mess, and I thought my bees are going to die. And I cleaned them up, and they were still alive somehow. But I knew that the moisture was clearly an issue in this location, at least with my hives and my setup, whatever was going on. I had to dry out these hives, and so I switched to some moisture quilts. And moisture quilts, I won't go into it really, but basically it's like some people call it a quilt box. There's a commercial product on the market now called a Vivaldi box. It's all the same thing. It's basically a box up top with mesh underneath it that holds an absorbent material, usually wood chips. And the wood chips absorb moisture, and then ventilation holes allow the moisture to evaporate, and it keeps the bees dry. But I don't use that anymore because it might keep the hive drier, but so much heat escapes from the hive with that upper ventilation that the bees are working extra hard just to stay warm. All that warmth they produce just goes right out the top of the hive. So they're constantly working, constantly clustering. They feel the cold much more than they would if they didn't have upper ventilation. And so I've switched to condensing hives, which is a setup where you basically replace the inner cover. At least this is what I do. I replace the inner cover with a piece of hard insulation, and I put a little bit of wrap around the hive. The moisture condenses on the cold sides of the hive where it doesn't hurt the bees. And the bees have no problem ventilating it all year round, exactly like that. I don't use upper ventilation at all anymore, but that's another video, I guess. Anyhow, so this is a ton of, it looks like a ton of bees, but you can see a lot of dead bees. They've been dead for a while. You can just tell by the look of them. They're just not fuzzy. They're all dark and whatever. It's a lot of dead bees there, and this is when I used a 1/2-inch mesh to keep the mice out of my hives, and I would never use that again because it doesn't keep out shrews. This is a shrew. I don't know what kind of shrew it is, but you can see here that it's dead, and it's sitting between these two frames. Like they have the weird flexible little skulls, and they can just squeeze into anything. Like they can easily get through a 1/2-inch mesh, no doubt about it. And that's what it looks like. And these little guys get into your hive, and they eat your bees. They're not like mice. They don't live in the hive. They don't, consume comb and all this stuff, and live there and disturb your bees. They come in and peck one bee at a time from the edge of the cluster, chew on it, eat it, pull it apart, and clean out its guts and then peck off another one. And they just keep doing that all winter long until they basically decimate your bees. And your bees will be so stressed because they've got this rodent inside their hive eating them alive that they basically perish, and it isn't good. And this shows you what it looks like. This is you can see first of all, this is some of the feces from the shrew, but you can see here like all these little desiccated, picked apart bee bits, like all their abdomens especially. But you'll see like little bits of wings, legs, everything's pulled apart. The heads right there, and so they just pull everything apart, and then they suck out all the guts out of the abdomen, and they just do that all year round until all the bees are dead, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah, see here's more of it, right? And this is also like a pretty. Yeah, I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing at the time. There's a few flaws in my my methods at that time, but still the shrews getting in there were just terrible. And so I ended up switching to 1/4-inch mesh to keep the shrews out and the mice out, and it works. But now I just use a standard mouse guard. I think it was like 1/4-inch by 3/8 of an inch, something like that. Anyway, but you can see this is the shrew poop, and these are the bits of bees torn apart and eaten and all that fun stuff. And you kind of don't want to do that. So 1/4-inch mesh. Anyone who says that 1/2-inch mesh is enough, good luck to them. And this is a lot of dead bees too. It's might be normal in some colonies, but I don't like seeing this much. But this here is dry sugar, what's left of dry sugar. And sometimes you feed the bees dry sugar using what some people call the mountain camp method. And the bees don't need it because they had honey up top, and they just end up discarding it all and throwing it down the bottom, and you're left with a pile of sugar that just makes a mess. So it works. You can, when the bees are really starving, they'll eat anything. But if they don't need any extra emergency feeding, they'll just view the dry sugar as they would debris, as dirt, and they just throw it out. And sometimes it just collects in the bottom of the hive like this, and you got to just deal with that, and it ends up being a big mess. So not always the greatest. What else can we see? Oh, this is a dead queen. This is the queen that I got from someone on the island. It was a mated queen. I bought a bunch of mated queens. I was requeening all of my colonies the way it worked out that year. And so I got a bunch of mated queens from somebody. And they were sort of like a Russian stock of bees. They weren't the normal Italian, or they definitely weren't exactly the same subspecies or breed or whatever. Yeah, it's maybe the same breed as the bees that I already had. So when I put them in the hive, they rejected the queens because these queens didn't. Oh, you can even see her stinger right there. When you have, like, say, a Russian honeybees, and you put the Russian queens in a colony that is Italian, they smell so different. The scent and the pheromones coming off these bees are so drastically different that they just don't want to accept them. So you can't just throw them in like you normally would and let them eat out the candy, and they release the queen after a couple days. They'll still kill the queen after a couple days. You need to keep them in there for like a week. Just cage them, let them feed the queen, do everything they want to do, but don't assume that you can just throw the queen in there. That's what I learned that year, because all my queens were rejected and killed, just like this one. What else do we have here? And that's it. That's a little trip down memory lane from 10 years ago.